I'm Daniel Kahn Gillmor. I am a free software developer. I work for the ACLU as a technologist interested in civil rights and civil liberties. I work on internet protocols at the IETF, and I work within the Debian project. And I'm interested in figuring out how we get more secure, more protected communications by default. And one of the things that's made me sad is the state of encrypted email. And so that's why I'm working on this Autocrypt project with a bunch of other people. And I want to explain to you what we're up to, give you a sense about what's going on there and why we're doing this. I should also note that there's going to be a Autocrypt workshop where you can actually try to get Autocrypt installed, which will be at 15 o'clock in Paris, so 3 p.m. in Paris. So if you want to, this talk is going to be a description of like the goals and the structure of the project, and hopefully questions and answers. I'm happy to have this be interactive. We have a mic line here, so if you have a question to ask, you can either wave your hand and then I'll have to repeat it for you, or you could just go to the mic and then I won't have to repeat it. But I'm happy to do it either way. And so there's space for Q&A at the end here, but I'm also happy to take questions if I'm not making sense, or if you strenuously object to something, or you just want to share an observation, I'd be happy to have it. So is everyone awake? It's 10 o'clock on Sunday. Raise your hand if you're not awake. Oh, that's not good. Okay. All right. So Autocrypt is encrypted email for everyone. Traditional emails like a postcard, we can do encrypted email, but just to get a sense of who here is in the room, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep squinting and going like this because these lights are blinding me. But who here has set up encrypted email ever? Wow, all right, we have a fairly high number of hands raised. Who here has actually used the encrypted email that they set up? Okay, so it's a little bit less. And who here used it in the last month? Fewer hands again. And who here used it yesterday? Yeah, okay. So there's a bunch of nerds at this conference. I'm one of them. Yeah, woo, shout out to my nerds. So encrypted email is really actually only usable by the persistent nerds among us. And one of the reasons that we don't use it every day, there were, I think, 2 hands raised, is because nobody else can use it. So the only people we can talk to with our encrypted email is other nerds who use encrypted email. So my goal, one of the goals for me for Autocrypt was people come to me in my capacity at the ACLU or just as an activist in New York City, and they ask me, hey, I'm suddenly realizing that all this information security stuff you were talking about isn't just your freakish paranoia. Can you help me out? Can you help me get set up? I want to protect my email first. And I say, okay, well, who here has helped somebody set up encrypted email, by the way? Okay, so a few people here, I think, probably know the pain of this. The pain is that you say to them, well, sure, when do you have a free day? And these folks are busy people, right? They're activists, they're doing other stuff. Maybe they've got a company that they're running. Maybe they just want to be able to talk to their partner. Maybe they're concerned about their employer. But they're busy people and they don't have a day. So you're like, okay, how about this? How about we do the short version? When do you have 4 hours free? And of course, nobody really has 4 hours free anyway. And what they just want to do is get on with the work that they're doing. And so Autocrypt says, what if we made it easy for those folks? What if somebody came to you and said, how do I protect my email? And you said to them, install any Autocrypt enabled, any Autocrypt capable mail program, and I'll give you a list of them, and turn it on. That was the training. And then when you go to send an email, you're going to get a checkbox that says, encrypt this message, if it's possible to encrypt. If it's not, you won't get the checkbox. That's the training. So not 4 hours, no explanation of number theory, which is sad because I like number theory. But the goal is to get this to be usable for actually everybody. And that should hopefully help out trainers as well. So the goals for Autocrypt are usability, simplicity, and security, right? So we want all of those things together. The sad part about these goals is that sometimes it's hard to get all of them at once. And we've always wanted all of these goals, I think. I'm assuming that nobody here who's worked on encrypted email for the last 30 years or so that we've had encrypted email available has wanted to not have any of these goals. We've just failed for 30 years to provide those goals altogether. And one of the reasons I think that we've failed is we've traditionally gone ahead and said, okay, security is like the ultimate concern here, and if usability and simplicity get in the way, well, sorry, those are out the window. And the result, of course, is that we have 30 years of clear text email because nobody can actually use it regularly, which means that if nobody else is using it, you can't use it either. So I'm sorry, my slides were, they're actually pretty cool and like flashy and stuff, and they're not being all flashy right now, and I kind of want to make them flashy so you can see all the fun animations and things that I've put in. So if you'll excuse me for 1 second here, I'm just going to try to get that back. Apologies for the garbage here. There we go. Okay, so let's see whether this works now. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So one of the things about Autocrypt is that we're basically turning a bunch of assumptions upside down, which is why I wanted to show you the nice swoopy graphics to reinforce the idea that the assumptions that you might have had before about the way encrypted email works and about the threat model and all of that, we're gonna break some of those assumptions. And that's kind of sad. It makes me sad because I liked those assumptions. But I'm not actually that worried about it because we haven't been meeting any of our goals for the last 30 years, so it's kind of time to do something new. So, right, so if these are our goals, what is Autocrypt going to be to look at this, right? Autocrypt is an interoperable standard, right? It's not an app. There's not like, oh, just go install Autocrypt. Our goal is we don't want you to have to decide to trust any one particular program, right? You shouldn't have to trust Facebook to be your mail delivery and to give you software to run on your device and to protect you from Facebook. That's all kind of confusing. We want interoperable standard. We want it to be able to work in the same federated environments that it works with email. We want the user experience to be as simple as possible, right? So Autocrypt is a standard, and you can say this app is Autocrypt enabled, this email program, this mail user agent. I might use all those words interchangeably. This is a nerd audience, so I hope mail user agent isn't too opaque or scary. It just means an email app. So Autocrypt is like a feature that an email app could build in. So why are we doing this? Why are we doing it this way? Why are we making this interoperable thing? Well, we want to get people on board, right? We want to get users on board, but we also want to get developers on board. We don't want a developer to feel like, oh, I'm competing with Autocrypt. No, we want you. I'm like, come on. Bring your app to this, and it will work with all the other Autocrypt-enabled apps. We want that kind of federation. We want more encrypted messages on the mail servers today. There's just too much clear text floating around. If we can make it easy for people to send encrypted email, then they will. If we can make it so that they don't get frustrated, it will. And you can only send someone encrypted email when they're using encrypted email, when they have the capability. So I should warn you, we're not going to encrypt all the messages because we care about user experience, and it turns out that in some cases, which are kind of a pain, we're not going to do encrypted messages. But that's okay, we're going to make it possible to send encrypted messages, which it currently isn't today. So, in detail, the Autocrypt goals are, it should work with any email account. That means you should not have to give up your name in order to use it, like your current handle in email. You shouldn't have to give that up. You shouldn't have to switch to be so-and-so at Wrapup or so-and-so at Tutanota. Or don't change it. It should work with any email provider. The provider doesn't have to do anything. We want to avoid the situations where people end up with unreadable mail, right? Unexpectedly unreadable mail, right? We want mail in general to be unreadable by the folks who shouldn't be reading the mail. But we want to make it so that when you're surprised that you get an unreadable mail, we want to minimize those situations. So in terms of attrition for people, like when everyone even put their hand down who had maybe used mail in the last month but hadn't used encrypted mail yesterday, when everybody put their hand down, one of the reasons why people sort of fall off of using encrypted email is because they're like, oh man, I just got this encrypted message, but like I'm traveling and I don't have my key, or this is such a pain because it didn't work, or somebody's encrypted to my old key, or there's like a whole series of paper cuts people have, and our goal is to minimize those paper cuts so that people don't just turn the whole thing off. And we've been pretty aggressive about saying, what can we do to make sure that people don't turn it off? We don't think users need to know the term key. I think the instant messenger situation has made it pretty clear over the last several years that it's possible to have end-to-end encrypted messaging systems of some sort where the users are not confronted with key management choices. We can make good, opinionated decisions on behalf of the user. We're not going to stop any user who wants to manage their keys themselves, but for Autocrypt's purposes, the user shouldn't actually see anything about the key. And we want it to just work across a wide variety of people, right? If I happen to be using email program X and you're using email program Y, I want to be able to just send you encrypted mail when I can. And crucially, and this is a major pain point, if we could forget about this last bullet point up here, the life of the Autocrypt project would be much easier. But it needs to work in an environment where people access their email from multiple devices. Who here accesses their email from only one device? Yeah. Okay. Who here accesses their email from only 2 devices? Right. And who here accesses their email from 3 or more devices? Right. So we're trying to deal with that reality. That's the situation. We want to make sure that that works too. If y'all weren't doing that, which is your problem, if you weren't doing that, then my job would be a lot easier. But it's not, so we're working with the world as it is. Okay. So what's the threat model here? The traditional email threat model is against extremely powerful adversaries, right? We want to protect against, a global active attacker who can do arbitrary things to your data, can muck around with your message store, can forge stuff, can maybe send arbitrary protocol elements. That's trouble. So for Autocrypt, we said, well, you know what? Maybe we can back off of that threat model at first. And we're just going to make sure that everyone gets protection against passive adversaries, right? A passive adversary is somebody who can read your mailbox, can read your mail in transit, but they're not going to inject arbitrary stuff. So to start with, we said, let's give ourselves a small size scope. What can we do to take this small thing and actually make it usable for a broad population? Now, I acknowledge that that means that an active adversary can probably break Autocrypt. But the current situation where we protect against an active adversary with encrypted email is broken anyway because nobody uses it. So you don't even need to be an active adversary because it's all clear text mail anyway, right? So for now, the first version of Autocrypt, the thing to try to get more mail user agents on board, is just protection against a passive adversary, and we have plans for the future to be able to detect active adversaries, so to detect when things have gone wrong. But those plans are not fully ironed out. We just want to get a broad-based protection against passive adversaries first so that we can have that level of protection for email. And the flip side of that is the underlying theory behind Autocrypt. Like, why do we pick this threat model? We picked it on the basis of a theory called opportunistic security, which is increasing in the protocol design community, that says, for years, we've been going about this a little bit backwards. For years, we've said, look, either you've got 100% security, or you might as well just take your clothes off and walk down the middle of the street naked, because it's not true security. We don't want to give people a false sense of security. Opportunistic security says, hey, let's just raise the floor, right? We know how to raise the ceiling. We've been raising the ceiling for a while now. Let's just raise the floor. Let's make it so that there's a easy baseline to defend you against weaker attackers and get that more widely distributed as a baseline. Let's get what we can where we can and keep trying to push it forward. It's not very satisfying for those of us who were raised on this idea of like, let's get 100% absolute security, but we've seen that hasn't actually worked. Better than clear text, the other version of the Autocrypt motto, right? We sort of joke around within the Autocrypt project about what's our motto. One of them is, it's better than clear text. The other one is, it's probably better than not doing it, which, just trying to set the stage here, right? But it should be easy, right? As long as we're not getting in people's way and it's better than not doing it, then that's a huge win over the existing infrastructure. Because we're aiming for this wide adoption, right? And we're aiming to make sure that users don't get frustrated. So that's where we're coming from. So I want to show you some ideas about what the configuration looks like for an Autocrypt mail user agent. This is the configuration. So, yeah, thank you. So I don't know if you do use encrypted email and you look at your encrypted email configuration, but this is our goal. This is what we want mail user agents, email apps that implement Autocrypt to have. We want you to just say, enable it. That should be the only configuration most users ever need to see. And if you click that button, then the next time that you're writing an email to someone, you might see this. Again, that's the user interface change, right? There's an encrypt this message checkbox. You can, it should be checked by default, I hear someone say. Right, so we've had quite a bit of discussion about that, and I love the idea of it being checked by default. But some of y'all people check your mail on multiple devices from multiple apps, I heard. I won't name any names, but if you do, chances are you're not going to get Autocrypt turned on all of your devices at once. And the result of that, if it's checked by default, is that you're going to send mail to someone, and they're not going to be at their device that's Autocrypt enabled, and they're going to be like, oh, dude, I'm at work right now, can you please resend it in the clear? And then you're going to get inured to the idea that one of the easy ways for I'm just going to resend stuff in the clear. And the person who receives that message that's encrypted when they didn't want it to be encrypted, when it was just by default encrypted, is, man, this Autocrypt thing is a pain in my ass because basically half the messages that I get now are encrypted and I have to write them back and there's this extra round trip and I don't want to keep doing that. So you know what, I'm just going to turn Autocrypt off. So that's why it's not encrypted by default. It gives you the opportunity to encrypt as long as you've received an email from someone else who uses Autocrypt. But we're not going to turn it on by default except for some unusual circumstances, and I can explain what some of those unusual circumstances are. And again, that makes me sad. I was looking at how can we make it turned on by default because I was really excited about that, but I've been pretty convinced that that will be one of the things that gives people surprising, unexpected, unreadable mail. Now, if I'm sending you mail and I know you've got multiple devices and I want to encrypt to you because this is a particularly sensitive message, I can go ahead and encrypt anyway. And if I'm doing that, it's a conscious choice. And that means that when someone writes me back and says, I can't get it right now, I'll just be like, that's cool. They'll get it when they get to one of their encrypted apps, right? But they're not going to be, I'm not going to be, accidentally sending them stuff that they don't like. When you're reading mail, if you get an encrypted message, it would look something like this. And again, for those of us who are used to the traditional model of like, oh yeah, let's make sure that we can check fingerprints here. Let's show the fingerprints. Let's do some complicated thing. Nope. The answer is just we're going to show you that this thing was protected, or we're not going to show it to you, and you're going to assume that it's clear text. If you want to get fancy about it, maybe at some point we'll replace that with this message was not encrypted for the not encrypted messages, the way that Chrome and Firefox are now doing for HTTP, which was awesome. We're not there yet in email because we haven't taken the steps that we need to establish the baseline. But that's about it for the user interface there. Now, I should add that there's a couple of other pieces of user interface that we plan on having available for the advanced user. So do you guys want to see the advanced user interface? Wait, I actually get mixed messages. Someone in this crowd says, no, I don't want to see the advanced user. This is not, you need to leave hope, I'm sorry. Oh, wait, have I missed it? I've missed sorry, where's my advanced interface? It is too advanced. I apologize. All right, let me, so the advanced interface, which apparently I failed to put in my slides because I was reformatting them to 4x3 format for the last hour. The advanced interface is a single checkbox. And the single checkbox says, enable Autocrypt mutual mode. So that's confusing to someone who doesn't know what's going on, but above that there will be text that says, if the sender and all recipients of a message have opted into Autocrypt mutual mode, then new messages will be encrypted by default. So that's where we get back to the encryption by default. And in the first round of Autocrypt clients, we're not going to make that particularly visible to the end user. There may be some Autocrypt clients that choose to check that checkbox by default for their users, but for a mail user agent that's just helping a user move along with their traditional mail, they're not going to check that by default. The reason we want that mutual opt-in is we want to make sure that we don't have like surprisingly unencrypted messages, surprisingly encrypted and unreadable mail. So that's it. That's one piece of the advanced interface. The other piece of the advanced interface will be what happens when you decide you want to make your mail client work with your other mail client. I'm going like this because I'm pretending that they're phones, but maybe one of them's your desktop or your laptop. And to do that in your mail user agent, there will be just a button that says, so you've already enabled Autocrypt on one client. And there will be a button that says, add another Autocrypt enabled app to this account. And you'll click that button, and there will be a bunch of numbers, and it says, go to your other account, go to your other app, and type in this series of numbers. Enable Autocrypt and type in this series of numbers. You go to your other app, and it'll present you with that same set of options. Once you've typed in that same set of numbers, then everything will work in the background. You don't have to know what's going on, and your settings and your preferences and all of whatever needs to be there will be transferred by default. All this is done just, I can go into under the hood in a little bit. You probably want to know how it's working under the hood, but that's it. Like that really is the full scope of what we expect the Autocrypt user interface to be, and nothing beyond that. So we have implementations, which is exciting. We have Enigmail. The latest version of Enigmail has Autocrypt features in it. It hasn't been pared down to as simple as we would like it to be in the Autocrypt version, but we are working on that. K9 Mail, the stable release, has Autocrypt capabilities built in as long as you have Open Keychain plugin installed. And likewise, the beta version has even more user interface improvements. Delta Chat is a novel mail user agent that takes a Telegram front end and hooks it into an email back end. And it has Autocrypt plugged in as well. The Not Much Mail user agent, which is one that I work on, I've got a development branch that I'm trying to get Autocrypt compliant. And we welcome lots of other mail user agents. We're in discussions with several of them. But if you have a particular one that you're interested in, I'd love to talk with you after the session, here at Hope, in an ongoing way. We don't have anyone currently working on a plugin for Outlook. I would really like to see that, but we don't have it yet. It would be super useful to have it built into Outlook. It would increase the user base indeed. So anyway, and same with mail.app, right? So I know that this is not exactly the crowd to expect Microsoft and Apple representatives in, but if you are, or if you are friends or acquaintances with any of them, please, if you use one of these programs, tell the folks who make your mail user agent that you want Autocrypt capability. We are an open group. We're happy to work with them, with whoever shows up, proprietary, non-proprietary. The goal is mass adoption.
They only show up if there's an ODA being dropped.
They only show up at Hope if there's an ODA being dropped, is the comment from the audience. I suspect that there are Microsoft and Apple people here just because I know some Microsoft and Apple people who are like actually good nerds who just happen to work for Microsoft and Apple. So I don't think that they're totally absent, but I don't know if they're probably not in this room. So does anybody want to understand like how this stuff works under the hood? Okay, I see some hands raised. So in my talk, if I'm presenting Autocrypt specifically to trainers, to an audience of people whose job is to go out and improve digital security, I would typically stop my talk where I did. Where we got to here, because what the user faces is what the trainer is going to be working with, right? And so I want to really emphasize that the core impact for Autocrypt is going to be on trainers and on the people who are trying to use encrypted mail, right? So I'm happy to go under the hood in this crowd because I think this crowd tends to want to know, and hopefully you'll pick apart some of the decisions and the descriptions that I'll give. But I really want to emphasize that we want to keep this user-facing part basically as it is because we think that is about as much complexity as we can expect a trainer to effectively impart to a group of people, particularly because the people the trainer trains, if they actually want to use encrypted email, will themselves have to become a sub-trainer and go out and tell their other contacts who didn't make it to the training, hey, can you turn this stuff on, right? So really we want this kind of adoption to be sort of virally spreadable because currently you're not going to get somebody who you just taught the rudiments of number theory to turn around and explain them to their friend in order to get encrypted mail set up. Fingerprint verification, it's just not happening. So, under the hood? Okay, so the answer is the tech is really stupid. It's not fancy at all. The messages that are encrypted using the OpenPGP standard. Same as most encrypted mail is probably within this crowd. It will interoperate with existing OpenPGP communications, so that's a nice feature. If your friend starts using Autocrypt and you're using traditional PGP model, you can continue using it and you'll still be able to talk with them. The key management arrangement is done with a series of very opinionated decisions that we expect all Autocrypt-capable mail user agents to hold to because they provide a smooth user experience. So the way that works is the first email that I send to you, I've never sent you mail before, you've never sent me mail before, that email is going to be in the clear. So this is sad because mail in the clear makes me sad. But in the real world, actually, that tends to happen a lot anyway. Like, who here has sent someone an email that said, "Hey, dude, can you send me your PGP key?" So, I have. Yes, there's lots of hands that went up there. So in this case, when I send you an email, I don't have to say, "Hey, dude, can you send me a PGP key?" It's just every email that I send to you embeds my public key in it, and it stuffs the public key in a header field. A really janky, ridiculously large header field in some cases, but that's okay. Turns out there's even jankier, more ridiculously large headers being stuffed in there by things like Microsoft SharePoint Defense or Pro 3000 or whatever it is. There's all kinds of garbage if you look at your email headers, and it turns out that stuffing a public key up there is actually not a big deal. So it stuffs my public key in the header of every message that I send out, and every time that I receive a message from someone, it checks to see whether that header is there, and if it is, it associates the email address, assuming a couple of syntactic checks pan out, it associates the key with the email address that was sent. So when you go to send, it's going to look in its opinionated key store and say, does the person who I'm sending to have an Autocrypt-capable key because of messages that I've received from them in the past? And if it does, then that checkbox, that encrypt checkbox, will be enabled. So again, this is sketchy, right? Because an active attacker can just modify that or strip it out or replace it with something, and we don't have a defense against that. However, if an active attacker is doing that kind of stuff, they can also intercept your message that says, hey, can you send me your PGP key, right? We're also not using key servers. There's a bunch of reasons we're not using key servers, among them reliability, spam concerns, GDPR concerns, but also particularly metadata traces. When you make a query to a key server, you're leaking to the key server your intent to communicate with someone, and we think that mail user agents shouldn't need to either have an HTTP stack available or leak information upon message composition. So what we're really aiming to do is put everything in the channel that the mail user agent can already use. So again, keys and headers, woo, fancy technology, right? But the point is, the actual part of Autocrypt that matters here is this opinionated key management view, where we expect the local mail user agent to make a very specific set of decisions during message composition time on the basis of information that it gathered from those things. So we call that the Autocrypt recommendation. If you're a mail user agent developer, you'd consult the Autocrypt recommendation when a new message compose window pops up. The recommendation basically says if you're replying to an encrypted mail, if you don't have keys for all the recipients, then encryption is disabled. You're going to send in the clear. If you have keys for all recipients and you're replying to an encrypted mail, the reply will be encrypted. If you have keys for all recipients and you're not replying to an encrypted mail, and everybody is in mutual mode, which is also communicated in that same header, then the reply will be encrypted. Then the new message will be encrypted by default. And if you're sending mail and you have keys for everyone, but you don't have everyone in mutual mode and it's not a reply, then encryption will be available, but not on by default. So again, a little bit sad, but the goal is not to get in the way. And it's a relatively simple rule for a mail user agent to write to consult an opinionated database that's built of all of these pieces that are sent in the headers between mail user agents. So that's all we need in order to do the simple thing. So it makes me sad that we're coming up with really stupid technology in 2018 because the time to come up with really stupid technology is in 2000, right? But we didn't do it. And we didn't do it because we were focusing on some extremely powerful threat actor and thinking, oh, well, we're going to build something that's like rock solid for all of the folks who are going to like take down the man, right? Which, hey, I want to take down the man too, right? I really appreciate that goal, but it turns out that everybody who wants to take down the man has people in their life who don't want to take down the man or don't have an opportunity to take down the man or are vulnerable in some other way. And if we focus our threat model on the folks who have the strongest security threats possible, the result is that they're either alienated from their community that they have around them because their community doesn't want to participate in some sort of paranoia game, or we force them to spend all of their time becoming an encryption trainer for their community, which doesn't, being an encryption trainer doesn't take down the man, right? Sending encrypted mail doesn't take down the man. If you want to organize to defeat an incumbent power structure that's unjust, you need to spend your time thinking about and organizing that. So our goal here is to make it so that the people who are organizers, the people who are under threat from powerful actors, will be able to do this without taking a bunch of time away from their work. I seem to have lost my projection. There we go. So that's the underlying piece that we need in order to let people sort of flood the network with encrypted mail. That's the hope. So do folks want to know about how it works under the hood for this setting up your other mail app? So you'll be surprised to hear this, but it's really stupid. Like all the other technology that I'm describing here. The solution is we're going to send ourselves email. So we're going to take the secret key that we need in our mutual mode setting, and we're going to bundle them up in an encrypted email of a certain format that's well-defined, and we're going to send it to ourselves. And then on the other mail user agent, we're going to look for email that meets that particular standard. And in order to be sure that we've got the same one, the encryption is going to be just a symmetric encryption between the two messages, and we'll just decrypt the message there and import it, which will give us the secret key material that we need to decrypt messages and allow us to import the mutual mode setting as well. So again, the underlying tech, not fancy. And that's our goal, actually, is to be not fancy. We want mail user agents to have it relatively easy to like pick that up and work with it. So again, an adversary who wants to screw with you, who has access to your mail spool, will be able to defeat you in this scenario. But an adversary who comes and grabs your mail spool after the fact, or who doesn't want to potentially get noticed, won't be able to do anything about it. You'll just be able to flood the network with encryption there. So, so we want people who use email to get involved, and you can do that as simply as by installing an app that's Autocrypt capable and turning it on. Remember, that's the training. Install an Autocrypt capable app and turn it on. We want trainers to get involved. Come and tell us what doesn't make sense here. Come and tell us what would make things easier for you. We want user interface and user experience designers to come help us tune the existing implementations and the existing theory behind like what should the interface look like. We want protocol designers to take a look at the constructs that we have. I'm pretty sure our constructs are really stupid, right? And we don't want you to come in and say, hey, we've got this cool new construct and the only thing that users have to do is well, first they have to make a series of complicated choices, and then those choices, if they intersect well with the other people's choices, like we don't want that kind of protocol design. But if you're looking at the Autocrypt setup message, for example, and the way that we do the setup code to help sync up these devices, we'd love to hear your feedback on that kind of stuff. And we're also looking for mail user agent developers to come and tell us, like, is this implementable? What do we need done? We've also got next steps. I'd mentioned that in a future version, we plan to defend, or at least detect, active attackers. So you might think that that means fingerprint verification, right? Or something along those lines. Safety number checks, I think they call it in Signal Private Messenger. So I want radical rethinking of this. I want people who are into gamified user interfaces to come and talk to us about a proposal that they think might work between a group of heterogeneous mail user agents. What if the same little dopamine hit that you got by, like, finding out you got a new friend on Facebook or whatever, you could get from your mail user agent that said, yes, you just, like, established that, this is you and your Autocrypt buddy now. Like, what can we do to make that kind of experience the user level experience, and have that also, in addition, give them some level of protection against active attackers? So we're looking for folks who have that kind of idea in mind. So the ways that you can help like this is by using it, right? Giving us feedback, encouraging other people to use it. Let us know when it's not working. We need the, email infrastructure needs to work. And if it doesn't work, we need to know that it's broken. If you come to the workshop that's later today, you can have some experience with it. I regret to say that in my talk, I showed you, like, the nice, simple thing. Not all implementations are there yet. But the more pressure that those implementers get from folks who are like, I'm excited about this, I want to use it, and it's still not simple enough. Make it simpler. We love feedback like that. If you can tell us where things went wrong, where you got stuck, we want to know. And if you're a developer, I strongly encourage you to come and talk to us and look at ways that you can do it. You might find, what you'll find in the discussion group, I think I've got a slide with, like, pointers. Yeah. So there's a website, there's a IRC channel, there's a mailing list. These are some of the implementations here. It's Enigmail and K9 and Delta Chat are three of them there. You might find that it's a welcoming group. We're kind of a no assholes group. We want people to be able to come and participate. And if you're a mail user agent developer or any of these other, if you're a user interface designer or you've got communications ideas, we want you to come and work with us. So that's my basic pitch for why Autocrypt is what I hope will be the thing that takes us towards actually not having as much clear text mail. And future versions of Autocrypt hopefully can level up on a base that we build today by giving them additional protections tomorrow. So that's the basic idea, and I would love to take questions, including questions that are critical. I'd love to hear what people are thinking about this. Thanks.
It seems like a large majority of users just want to use webmail.
Yes.
On their computers. Never mind the fact that they're probably using, like, Gmail on their phones.
Yep. Okay, so that's great. Thank you for raising that point. One of the few things that Autocrypt has refused to compromise on is the idea that you do need to use an email program. Now, that's a disappointment for, as you said, a lot of people who prefer to just use webmail. But the fact is, if your goal is to provide unreadable mail for the people that you really don't want to read your mail, you do need to be in control of the mail reading experience. So straight up webmail, like I can walk into an arbitrary internet cafe and pull up a browser on an arbitrary computer and read my encrypted mail, that doesn't actually work. I'm sure there are folks in here who can give a more detailed rundown of why that doesn't work, but essentially you can't use somebody else's machinery to get clear text access to a thing that that you want to keep from the person who controls that machinery. That said, webmail with an extension, where your browser could have an extension that basically the extension becomes the mail user agent, is something that we do want to support. And we're in discussions with Mailvelope. Hopefully we can get Mailvelope on board and other folks who have a webmail model as well. As far as the Gmail app goes, I don't know whether Google would be interested in this. Google supposedly had an end-to-end thing planned, and it kind of like drifted off. So I don't know if they're willing to come back and work with us, but if they are, we'd love to see the Gmail app adopt this. But you can also just install a different app and connect it to your Gmail account. So thanks for raising that. Yep.
So this might be an early morning, I missed it thing, but one of the problems with PGP is that it just bleeds metadata. I mean, from lines, subject lines, are still in clear text and so forth. So could you say a little bit more about, how you plan to adjust the mail reading experience?
Yeah, thank you for raising that. So it's not just a problem with PGP, it's a problem with all encrypted mail right now, SMIME as well. I was just at the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force in Montreal, in the LAMPS working group, which stands for something to do with encrypted mail. I don't remember how they work out that acronym. And there are proposals on the table, both in the IETF and outside, for protecting email headers. This email is a classic example where if Susan has access to the mail spool, she can see the plans for Susan's birthday because the only thing that was encrypted was the body. Several different mail user agents, including both Kahn and Enigmail, now have the capacity to do protected subject lines. So that doesn't protect the from line and the to line, but it protects the subject, which is arguably the most important piece of metadata. And the mechanisms for doing that, these protected headers, so-called, are capable of extending to the rest of the interface, to the rest of the headers as well. But there are some deliverability and routability problems for things like from and to. But we are trying to address that problem too. That's a stupid paper cut that, again, we should have fixed 30 years ago. So thank you for raising that. It's not officially part of Autocrypt to fix it, but we will hopefully fix it in the broader email ecosystem. Yep.
So you said previously that when you're sending keys to another device, you basically send yourself an email, and it's symmetrically encrypted. Where do you get the key for that symmetric encryption?
The initial Autocrypt-enabled device generates a high entropy, we call it the Autocrypt setup code. And so when you say, add another Autocrypt-enabled device to my account, it generates a setup code, uses it to encrypt, it builds the setup message, the self-sent message, encrypts it with the setup code, shows the user the setup code, and then sends the message in the background, and then the user pulls it up and types the setup code in. So the goal is not to have the user have to come up with high entropy anything anywhere. You'll note also that there were no passwords involved. Thanks.
Hi. When someone makes an Autocrypt proxy, are there any plans to use a protocol like Diffie-Hellman to detect message modification?
So an Autocrypt proxy is not currently something that I'm super keen on. I'm sure someone will make one. You're talking about something that's doing a malicious rewrite?
Yes.
So I think the way that we defeat the active adversary, so like I said, the baseline Autocrypt does not defend against an active adversary. If they want to attack, they can attack. And our hope is that the next version of Autocrypt, which will hopefully come out within the next year, will provide detection mechanisms for being able to see that that's happening. You don't need Diffie-Hellman, you simply need key agreement mechanisms. So that is on the roadmap, but it's not going to be handled for the first version. We want the first version to be easier to deploy. Thank you.
Hey, Daniel. I just wanted to know, with Autocrypt, the standard mail user agent encryption up until now has been PGP,
Yep.
right? So the standard mail client will give you a checkbox or a button to say encrypt this mail.
Yep.
And Autocrypt essentially has the same thing.
Yep.
And it may do it automatically by default. What happens if you're trying to use PGP with someone who you've also done Autocrypt with?
So thank you for the question.
The confusion.
I understand the confusion. I see your confusion and I raise you some confusion.
Cool.
The standard is actually, the most widely implemented mail user agent encryption mechanism is SMIME, not
Okay.
PGP.
All right, good enough.
And when you encrypt a message today to someone, you'll find that if you've installed PGP, then you actually sometimes do get two different ways to encrypt. And so the goal for Autocrypt is to hide all of that complexity from the user. The fact is, under the hood, Autocrypt is using PGP. So the fact that you say encrypt to this person it's going to be PGP anyway. But they don't need to know. We don't need the letters PGP. We don't need to know about, like, the client needs to make those decisions for the user. And if the client ever presents the user with a confusing situation where they have two choices of how they encrypt, the client has failed, in my opinion. So the goal, that you're absolutely right that that's a concern, and clients should be aware of it. And the goal is users shouldn't have to experience it at all.
If that's the case, then is usually with, let's say, Enigmail,
Yep.
you would have a choice of, let's say, which key to encrypt with. Would this be like you'd have an interface to then say choose Autocrypt versus?
The goal here for Autocrypt, for a pure Autocrypt implementation would be there's no visibility for the users of keys at all. In the event that you have someone who's operating in a kind of mixed mode, they've done some kind of nerdery on the side, well, that nerdery needs to be clear about what they're doing. If that nerdery gets in the way of Autocrypt providing a simple and easy answer, then I will sort of hope that people can trim it down. But yeah, the goal for Autocrypt is the user doesn't have to make decisions like that. Yeah.
Just curious, what happens if you receive a public key in the header that doesn't match one that you already received in the past?
Right, that's a great question. So in the event of we call that a key change event, we have a set of rules for the mail user agent of what to do when it receives a message, which has an Autocrypt header, or even a message that, got it, 2 minutes left. Even if it receives a message that doesn't have an Autocrypt header, there's a set of rules about how you keep track of that and what you do, and those rules basically imply the result of a key change. In the current version, Autocrypt will not alert on a key change. And we hope that people who are interested in user experience will come and talk to us about how we can transform key change events into something that the user can actually understand. The reason for that is that there are legitimate cases where you might have a key change event, like someone installs and reinstalls the application, or they lost their device. And so at the moment, we don't have a defense against that. Yeah.
People like to ask me what kind of email they should use, and if I'm going to be recommending a web client email to them, and I want to plant the seeds for them to be using Autocrypt at some point, what are the best choices?
You said a web client email. I'm not sure what that means
like
exactly.
Gmail.com or riseup.net.
So the answer is Autocrypt will work with any email provider.
Okay.
As long as that provider gives the mail user agent the ability to send email with arbitrary headers and arbitrary content types and bodies, and B, the ability to receive email. Like, those are the two things that we haven't been able to squeeze out of the requirements yet, but as long as your mail provider allows those things, Autocrypt should work. Yep, one more question, and then I got to close it up.
That's fine. So I might have missed it during the talk, but did you have any plans for making kind of backups easy or things like this? So if I lose the device or I lose my private keys, I know I don't know about keys, but what happens to me?
That's great. So there's a whole bunch of additional research that we hope that Autocrypt will open up. Not just backups, but actually search. There's a bunch of usability issues where some current mail user agents, if they have encrypted messages, can't even search for them, which means people are like, oh, don't send it to me encrypted because I want to be able to search for it later. So I think if we get this stuff working, it will encourage us to make a lot of changes to the way we think about handling encrypted mail, whether that's backups or not. I have a bunch of ideas about that. If you want to talk to me about them later, that would be fine. We are just about out of time. I would love to take the last 2 questions that are in line, but I also want to make sure the next speaker has a chance to come up and talk. So I think I'm probably going to get this signal. So I'm around afterwards. There's a workshop at 15 o'clock in Paris. If you're interested and you want to try it out, come try it out. The workshop, you don't have to use your existing email address if you don't want to, if you're scared about it. I'll have some demo email accounts you can use if you just want to try it out there. So thank you all for coming. I know it was super early, and I'm sorry we didn't get through the whole mic line. Thanks.